Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to welcome you here to this special occasion. We have really been anticipating this afternoon and having Dr. Collins here. Dr. Collins is a favorite of this group of people who value health, and it's a real pleasure to introduce him this afternoon. My wife and I are patients of his, as well as some of the rest of you in this audience this afternoon. And Dr. Collins, I think, bears the fine reputation that is quite unusual. I have honestly never heard one person say anything negative about this man, especially his patients. They speak very highly of him and his ability to somehow ferret out exactly what they seem to need. And that's certainly the case with my wife and I. We're so happy to have him here this afternoon. He's going to be dealing with the subject of cancer. We're all very keenly aware of the fact that that is an epidemic in America today. And we need to know everything we can know about it, and especially how to prevent it. And if you've had cancer, I'm sure you also will be benefited by what you will hear this afternoon. Dr. Collins, we're delighted to have you here. I think before you begin, let's have a word of prayer. I'd like to do that. Father in heaven, we're grateful for the fact that you are interested in our health. You're the God who created us, and we believe that living healthfully brings honor and glory to your name. Father, bless us this afternoon that we might glean and gain something that will truly be a blessing to us. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Please welcome Dr. Collins.
Good afternoon. We will have handouts that will pertain to the second session. Obviously, you can take as many notes as you like. This first dealing with why the rise in cancer lacks a little bit, and we're going to be talking theory and getting an over picture of what's the. Then we're going to narrow it down and give specific recommendations for the major cancers that we're dealing with in this country. So with that in mind, we're going to start our journey this afternoon looking at World War I. An absolute took place that you couldn't afford. And the reason you couldn't afford it, because you couldn't pay people enough to do it. Because it's hard to get 3 million people in your experiment, number one, and number two, to do. You can see, we're talking about 18 area, World War. Dr. Mikkel Henhines planned perfectly logical to use. I feel like anyway, if you have another one, maybe we switch out. Dr. Heinheld's program is really simple. Stop livestock, start feeding it the people. Good logic, wouldn't you say? Right now, if we did that in America, and 3 more Americas. We do not have a food shortage in this world. We have an animal. Get the one that Pastor uses. That should be in good shape, right? I spoke to the pastor of this church on the way here. He was telling me that he was not going to make it because he had to be at a different meeting, so we'll hold him responsible for this, okay? World War I, we're looking at Denmark. They put this experiment into place. Right now, we have about 85% of our soybeans and 85% of our corn going to animal food. That's why I can make such a statement that if we fed it all to people, we'd be feeding 3 Americas. We don't really have a food shortage. What we have is an animal excess. So back, we looked at the first mass vegetarian experiment. If you can believe a whole country only has 3 million people in it, that'd be incredible. But remember, this is World War I, before most of you here were born. Here's the amazing part. In 1 year of being on basically a vegetarian diet, the death rate dropped 34% from the preceding 18 years. So obviously, it's pretty simple. They've been keeping records since 1900. This was 1918. So for those 18 years, from the average preceding 18 years, they had dropped 34%. If that happened in 1 year in America, you would decrease all hospitals in the United States by 1/3. You would increase the death rate by 1/3. So still losing over 2 million people a year in the United States, we'd be losing about 1.2. Incredible experiment. Why don't we do it? What are we waiting for? Someone else to die? See, it's that simple, and the information is from 1918, and look where it was printed. Journal of American Medical Association, 1920. Isn't that amazing? Why doesn't your doctor read this? It's really that simple. But you know what? It's really complicated. Because you know what it depends on? It's what you put in your mouth. You make the decision. I make the decision. You don't have to have your PhD to be healthy, by the way. There's a lot of unhealthy PhDs, even in nutrition. World War II, German occupation of Norway. What happened here? Government was reduced sharply, in some cases completely eliminated, meat to the citizens. Can you believe that? It would almost be riots if we eliminated meat to the citizens of America, wouldn't there? I'm not sure who'd riot most. You know what happened in New York City when the doctors went on strike, don't you? You've heard this story, I'm sure. Well, it's not a story, it's what really happened. The death rate in New York City dropped when the doctors were on strike. I also tell you that's not fair, because if the doctors stayed on strike long enough, I'm sure, but it was a temporary dip in the death rate in that city when the medical people went on strike. So maybe it's not a bad idea. Maybe you start figuring out you need to take care of yourself. Age-related death rate per 10,000 population we're looking at Norway here. We've got 3 age groups, 40 to 59, 60 to 79, and 80 plus years. You go, listen, I'm 80, I can't change. I said, no, it's up to you. I was a very young doctor, 26 years old, out of school. Had a lady that walked in the office and said, are you old enough to be a doctor? I chose not to answer that question because there's no good answer. I didn't bring out my driver's license. I didn't show my certificate. We just went on. So we just left that as a rhetorical question. I chose not to say anything. But at 80 plus, I had a man that walked my office who was 95. So I didn't know whether I should pay him for a consult or if he should pay me. He was incredibly pleased with the program I put him on. He came back a month later, follow-up. He was healthy, doing good, walking his mileage, and feeling great, and was very pleased. I'm going, you taught me something, sir. There is no person that walks in this office that's too old to get healthy, or too old to need help, or too old that I'm not going to pay attention to. I want to pay attention to people who want to change. I don't care what your age is. That's actually irrelevant. So, in the younger age group, 40 to 59, you notice I said younger. I don't even qualify for that one anymore. Younger age group, in 1938, their death rate was about 0.7 person per 10,000. And you can see the death rate was going up and down, and somewhere in 1941 area, it got up to a little bit over 1. But then during the war years, look what happened. It dropped from about 1.2, down to 0.1. about a 12-fold decrease, or if you want to say it different, a 1,200% decrease in death rate, even in this younger group. Let's go to the next group, 60 to 79 years of age. It went from about 25 down to 5. That's a 500% reduction. That's phenomenal. That's even better than I showed you in World War I. In the older age group, we had about 200 people per 10,000 dying before the war. During the war, slightly after, well, we're running about, this is about when it ended, 45 here, the death rate dropped from 200 to 100. They had a 100% decrease. Even at age 80, during wartime, when their property was being devastated, when their young men were being killed, when they probably got run out of their homes, when they didn't have enough to eat. Tell me about stress. You can't blame it on low stress. They all went to the Bahamas and took it easy for the year. No, this was rough times for them. So what can we learn from this? The big question is why? Why the decrease in death rate from all ages across the whole board here? Here it is. If you look at the death rate total now, 1938, 1939 area, it peaked about 31, this is all ages now, and dropped from 31 down to below 23. So over a third decrease in that population. You notice the graph right below it. It's too simple, folks. Don't trip over this. This is so simple that most people aren't going to catch on. It's that simple. So if you say that's too simple, then you got it. They decreased their fat consumption from over 17, this is kilograms. Now, kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So 17 times 2.2 is about 35, 36 pounds of fat a year. They dropped that from that down to about 9.8. Do you notice these graphs look somewhat similar here? Death rate down, fat consumption down. I think we learned something. Major cause of cancer is dietary fat intake. Most common cancer deaths in the United States, lung for both groups, male and female, is your biggie. Stopping smoking knocks out 90% of that one. So if you're a non-smoker, that first category is basically irrelevant to you. If you're a secondhand smoker or a passive smoker, that obviously would make your chances go up. Number 2 for men is colon. Colon cancer shouldn't even exist if we eat things that the colon likes. If you eat things the colon doesn't like, we got a problem on our hands. And third for men is prostate. Second for ladies is breast. And third is colon. Now this isn't new cases or number of people that have it. This is deaths by that. So the people that got on this chart got there so that I can learn something and so we can both learn something that we don't want to be on a chart. Dr. Merrick, Journal of American Medical Association again, some of the most common cancers may be related to inadequate oxygenation of vital tissues due to atherosclerosis. It's intriguing that cancers of the breast, prostate, and colon, the biggies here, are mainly found in societies afflicted with cardiovascular disease. You block up the vessels, you're going to get cancer. You keep the vessels open, you get less cancer. You go to a country that has a lot of heart disease, they will have a lot of cancer. You go to a country that has a lot of cancer, they will automatically have a lot of heart disease. These two, this is a twin disease here. These are not different diseases. These are different manifestations of a same problem. See, medicine doesn't get complicated until you get too many specialists. And then every specialty has to make it more complicated. And it's medicine is if you can name the right name. Well, what medicine starts naming is say broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower. These aren't hard names. You know, you don't even have an expert. You know, cabbage, go through the whole list. If you walk to your doctor and he wrote you out a script like I do for some people, you probably would either shoot him, laugh, or all the above, or go home and say, you know what? I think I might try this. So when I write out your script for eating 2 cups of cabbage a day, that is probably the most powerful drug I could ever give you. Take it on. Try it out. And a lot more reasonable. Cancer's on the rise. Cancer, right now, is our #1 killer in North Carolina. I got to be careful where I speak, because I speak outside the state a fair amount, but I'm home now, so that's the #1 killer in North Carolina. It beat out heart disease about a year or two ago. I've been watching this happen, believe it or not. I've been heading towards 40 years being in practice here. But I've been watching this whole thing. See, I was trained in heart disease. That was the biggie. And I kept seeing cancer sneaking up and sneaking up and sneaking up and sneaking up and says, it's going to get us. It's going to outrun us. And sure enough, it has. This is looking at different types of cancers for men, males, by site, 1930 to 2005. Relatively simple. Lung is still our biggie. Prostate, and this chart is next. Colon's next. And everything else from your leukemias, your liver, your pancreas are running pretty much the same. Over the years, we haven't done much. Stomach cancer has come down significantly over the years. Lung cancer has continued to go up and has peaked and now is coming down. So, this is the reality check with this slide. Because you have 650,000 people in the United States dying from cancer a year now, we have a lot more people in the United States now than we did in 1950. In 1950, we had about 150 million. Sources vary a little bit, but that's close. Now we're running about 330 million. So now I got twice as many people. So if I have twice as many people and the rate stays the same, I should have twice the amount of cancer risk with no more greater percentage. That's why I show you this slide, because sometimes we can get a little bit confused. Heart disease, the whole category of heart, not cardiovascular, rest of your vessels. Heart disease, in 1950, the rate was 586 people per 100,000 in the United States. And that's when we had 150 million people in the United States. Heart disease in 2005 has dropped to 211 people per 100,000 in 2005. And you can go, wow, we're doing something right. Well, I wish we were. The problem is we doubled the people. We still have a lot of people with the disease. It's just that percentage-wise it's come down, which I'm grateful. Cerebrovascular accident, here's stroke, et cetera, from 180 per 100,000, down to 46. You go, good. How about influenza and pneumonia? From 1950 at 48.1, now to 20.3. And by the way, that wasn't due to the influenza shot. I can guarantee you that. How about here? Here's the painful truth. Cancer rate, 193, 183. Cancer rate is basically the same since 1950 to 2005. How much money have we spent on cancer research, cancer treatments, radiating, cutting, burning, everything we've done? We're not getting ahead. So the reason cancer rate is so high is because we have twice as many people in this category now because we have twice as many people in the United States. So therefore, the cancer rate, as far as number of people dying in the United States, is going to be twice what it was in 1950. But then we've got twice the population. The problem is we still have too many people dying from cancer, and everything we've done for the past 60 years is not getting anywhere. So I hope you are willing to listen this afternoon, because I can share with you about people who have gotten somewhere and what possibly can help you get somewhere. Because cancer, once detected, is very disastrous. That's why we're talking about prevention here this afternoon. Don't let the horse out of the barn. Once the horse is out of the barn, he doesn't want to get back in. Early detection is not prevention. Mammograms don't save lives. That's bogus. If you believe that, go do your research. We give these people, we say, well, we can find it in early detection. I'm going, I don't want early detection. I want no detection. I don't want you to find anything. And the treatments we use to detect cancers, guess what? Are part of the problem. U.S. mortality rates, 1991. That's a long time ago. You're right. Doesn't change the facts, though. I want to show you what populations that were eating certain diets and what they found out. Number one, this data is from the Adventist health study done in California. And you can say you think California is strange. you can say that. I was educated there. I lived there. And if it didn't have so many people there, I'd recommend we all move back. Because San Diego is an awesome place to live. It's just it's got about 5 million too many people in the area. If all the people were gone, I'd be glad to be back and have my own avocado grove. That group that we're talking about here, 50% of that group ate meat, 50% didn't. Back in 1991, there was very few vegans. In fact, I don't know if the name was even invented. But let's look at it. The group that we're dealing with heart attacks, we'll do this quick because our topic is cancer. And the heart attack rate, about 50% of that group from the Adventist Health Study that ate meat had a heart attack. But what's the comparison? Who are we comparing this to? The general population, if I had their line here, would have been 100%. So you could say, well, they had over a 40% decrease. The lacto-ovo-vegetarian, lacto-milk, egg-consuming vegetarian had 39%. The vegan vegetarian had 14%. You can almost pick your disease. Now, I will admit there's 14% of the population that still had a heart attack and they were still vegan, because I get that question. People walk in the office, I've been vegan for 5 years. Why do I have cancer? I'm saying, well, it does make a difference how long you've been vegan. It also makes a difference because you can be a French fry eating vegan or you can be a baked potato eating vegan. You can cheat in all these programs, obviously. We look at the cancer side of the coin. The meat-eating group had 42%, so they had almost a 60% reduction. They're doing something right. That group basically doesn't smoke, doesn't drink alcohol, eats a lot less meat, eats a lot more vegetables. To ovo-vegetarian, 32%. So they got a drop between eating animal, actual steak here, versus milk and eggs. But look at the vegans, 3 to 4%. There is no bulletproof program on this earth. I have no data that has a 0 next to that group. I wish I did. So when I deal with big numbers, this looks awesome. When I deal with an individual in my office, that might be one of those 3 to 4%. It's still, unfortunately, too close to home. Dietary fat, we gave you a clue about one of the major causes for cancer in general. We're looking at breast cancer here specifically. And what I want you to notice is that the dietary fat intake across the bottom. Now I want to show you something. This stuff is so old, most of you weren't even born yet. In 1944, they started tracking these countries between 1944 and 1966. See, what I'm telling you has been known. This is nothing new. In fact, it's old. So what do we know? Thailand, a very small amount, 20 grams of fat per day, and very low of the death rate of breast cancer. And you start going up the scale, and you have found the United States, I'm sure, high in the fat intake and high death rate for cancer. Same slide, a little more expanded with more countries. You look at Japan, El Salvador, Mexico, Philippines. Unfortunately, Japan is not here anymore. Japan is up here with the United States. See, America has this reputation of trying to help out countries after a war. And we send them Long John Silvers and McDonald's, and we send over the Marlboro Man, and we do all these stuff for these developing countries. Well, I wish they would tell us to keep our junk and keep it home, and stop killing yourself, by the way, and we're not interested. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. But I want to show you one thing. We're talking about fat here. Do you see Italy? What kind of fat is Italy known for? Isn't that amazing? That stuff that you've been told is good and healthy for you doesn't work. Why don't they give you the evidence? Examine the evidence. We're trying to do with evidence-based medicine. Meaning, do you have the facts? Most things that your doctor tells you is not the facts. I'll give an example since we're talking about breast cancer. Mammograms and physical exam together yield a certain result of ladies alive 5 years later. Physical exam by itself, guess what? Yielded the same result of ladies alive 5 years later. Therefore, the mammogram didn't do anything to save anybody's life. And in fact, the younger a lady starts getting these, the more likely they are to have breast cancer. Because you can't radiate a tissue repeatedly year in and year out without having some side effect. This is simple. You can't get that much x-ray. You wouldn't do it, and if you don't believe me, look at the people in the department that give you the x-ray. They look like they're a spaceman. Well, why are they so dressed up? If x-rays are good for you, why don't they just get a few extra ones? It should make sense. I mean, this is not hard. I don't know why we've been sold such a bill of goods. Back to olive oil. Olive oil, in and of itself, might be better than lard. But olive oil is not what you want for good health. Here's what we don't know. We know that countries that use a lot of olive oil have a fair amount of breast cancer. Here's what we don't know, because I don't have the study. If you only use like 1 teaspoon of olive oil a day all your life, would you have any negative side effects? I don't know that. I always treat people on the other end of the spectrum that they say, I have cancer, what can I do to get my immune system back in gear so that I can fight this thing? So I'm always on the therapeutic end of it. We don't know on the lower end if you'll have the same problem. I don't even have a study to prove that one way or the other. If we look at another cause of breast cancer, we're looking at estrogen levels for the lifetime of the lady. When you eat a diet, typical American diet, high fat, high cholesterol, low fiber, low in nutrients, high in calories, you're going to get puberty earlier. This slide shows 12 years of age, and you're going to get menopause later, 50 years of age, as compared to a starch-based diet, which is a nice way of saying eating your vegetables. Menstruation would be later, and menopause would be earlier. So you have less years of cycling, less exposure to hormone-sensitive tissue, which breast is, but you also have a lower level of estrogen running in the bloodstream for all those years too. Obviously, estrogen is necessary. It's a very functional hormone. The problem is our diets cause us to make way too much. Animal protein and estrogen go hand in hand. The higher the animal protein, the higher the estrogen level. We learned this from Japan. We look at the Japanese, age of menses, age of going through puberty for young ladies. In 1875, it was 16 and a half years of age when they went through puberty. 1950. Now here's a question. What happened between 1875 and 1950 in Japan? World War II. What was happening in 1950 in Japan? They were being rebuilt. Yes, bricks and mortar, but also adopting more American food, unfortunately. So in 75 years, 1875 to 1950, in 75 years, they decreased their age of menses from 16.5 to 15 to 1.3 years. After the war, look what happened. In a 10-year span, it decreased the same amount as what took 75 years. We are going in the wrong area, big time. Why didn't we turn around at that point? We had all the evidence we needed by 1960. By 1970, we dropped another 1.4 years. And this study actually stopped in 1974 at 2.2 years, and they compared to the Caucasians in America at 12.5. Any guesses on what the age of puberty is now for young ladies in America? This is average, means there's some before this and some obviously older than this. Any guesses? You're right on target, 10.7 years. We have girls that should be playing with dollies able to have a baby. And it just totally messes their lives up. We have a lot more delinquency among females. We have a lot more attitude among females. We have a lot more problem. Moms, you can speak to it better than I can. But the problem is, Mom, you got to take some responsibility because it's called the knife, the fork, and the spoon. What did you give that child to make them grow like this, to make them mature this rapidly? What are we doing? So it's not just getting cancer when you're 62. It's a whole continuum we're dealing with of hormonal situations and problems on. So we got fat, we've got hormones. Here's the declining age of menses over the years, and they're showing at age 10 here, by 2010, And obviously, this slope is not going in the right direction. There is hope, though. For every generation that turns this around, they usually put the clock back about 1.3 years for every generation. So how you treat your children, and you keep going like that. This is the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Institute in Seattle, Washington. And of course, I like unique slides, and so I'm saying, what did they say caused breast cancer in their participants that came to their center to be treated for breast cancer? Here's what they found out. Those ladies consuming meat less than 1 time per week, they set their risk of having breast cancer at 1. This is called relative risk. It may have been 10 in that group, but they still count that as 1 comparing to the other groups. The next group, they said if you eat meat 2 times to 4 times per week, then you had 2.5 times the amount of breast cancer as the first group, less than once a week. If you ate meat daily, you had almost 4 times the risk of breast cancer as the group that ate it less than once a week. So they're not even comparing it to vegetarians here. They're comparing it to breast cancer for meat once or less a week. Let's take a look at eggs. Once again, they put the first group, it says times per week. About 1 egg a week, their risk was set to 1. If you eat 2 to 4 eggs a week, it's almost 2, and daily, it's almost 3. So it's a dose relationship. The more meat you eat, the more eggs you eat, the more breast cancer the ladies will have. Butter and cheese gets kind of interesting here. Once per week, they set it at 1. 2 to 4 times a week, they set it at 3.25. And if you eat it daily, it goes down. I just can imagine the headlines. The more butter and cheese you eat, you can reduce your breast cancer risk. That's kind of nonsense that I have to read in some journals. Can you believe that? I'm going, wait a minute. If I'm going to encourage, and by the way, I don't know why they've had the drop. I really don't. But I'm glad they have it on there because I believe their data. Because what you do, you like to cut the study right here and make it look good for everything. Well, they didn't make their study look good. They actually reported the facts. I'm thankful. I can believe it. Here's the point. If you're going to fall off the fence, please fall off on that side. Obviously, the take-home message is less is better, less is better, less is better. Another major cause of breast cancer and all cancers, but specifically we're looking at this right now, is a premenopausal lady that is thin before she goes through menopause. Her risk is 1. If she's overweight, it's twice. If she's obese, it's 3 times the rate prior to going through menopause. After menopause, the thin lady was put at 1. And by the way, when they say thin, that means normal now. Normal and thin are the same. See, people call me thin. I go, no, I'm not. I'm normal. Go look at the 1960 Metropolitan height, weight, life insurance tables, and you'll find what weight you should. But guess what life insurance companies did? Increase your rates or increase your weight. It was incredible. They changed the numbers. So now they have changed their numbers. They probably are still charging you more for your life insurance. But anyway, postmenopausal, overweight, 5 times the risk, and obese postmenopausal female has 12 times the risk of getting cancer. Guess what? It's not just the fat. It's what the fat tissue does to the immune system so that it can't recognize the abnormal cell. This is not a cosmetic issue. This is not a matter of calling people names. This is a matter of what does excess fat do to your immune system. And that's when it all makes sense. Fats promote cancer growth. We are looking at colon tumors now, and we are looking at rats. We're not rats. We can extrapolate somewhat, but I want to show you a point that changed my thinking significantly. We were always recommending people use corn oil and get rid of the lard and use your unsaturated fats to reduce your cholesterol level to prevent heart disease. That was what we were taught. That's what we did. And guess what? We could lower people's cholesterol level. This is before the days of statin drugs, by the way. But look at this. Rats on a 10% corn oil diet, 36% of those animals got colon cancer, colon tumors. On the 10% lard diet, 17% of those rats got colon cancer. Do not leave here and say that Dr. Collins recommends lard. That is not the take-home message here. Push it to the logical conclusion. We eat about 48% of our calories come from fats for most of us. Corn oil at 40%, lard at 40%, about the same. But here's the take-home message. We have been sold a bill of goods that unsaturated and polyunsaturated fats are good for you, and lard is terrible. And what I'm saying, don't buy it. The evidence tells me that they both have significant problems when it comes to cancer and when it comes to heart disease. If you like corn oil, it's called corn on the cob. Enjoy it. If it doesn't taste good, they got it out of the wrong field. Go get another farmer. Or maybe grow it yourself. Colon cancer, this one is in males. It looks like the same charts I've been telling you before. Fat consumption across the bottom, and look at the country. May I point out Italy? May I point out United States? May I point out Thailand? Same story, second verse. It almost gets boring. So what do we learn? Fat is dose-related regardless of type of fat. Some of these countries are going to eat olive oil. Some of these countries are going to eat lard. And some of these countries are going to eat any fat they can get their hands on. Colon rectal cancer. 90% of the cases occur after age 50. Third leading cause of cancer in the United States. Second leading cause of death. Average lifetime risk is about 6%. You go, that's not too bad. I mean, it's 96% not. Well, I don't want to be one of those 6 because it is getting more prevalent. Men and women are affected equally. Women are more likely to have right-sided colon adenomas. Take your right hand, put it on your right side. That is called ascending colon. Men have more in the descending. Don't ask me why, please. Distributed among racial groups, African Americans, Hispanics have a lower survival rate. So if anyone should be listening to me, don't get it so you don't have to even deal with that issue. Here's the problem. We've been told that unsaturated fats are good for us, etc., etc. This is an unsaturated fat. These chemical names are not that complicated. It's unsaturated. Notice across the bottom, all these H's stuck on all these C's. This is hydrogen. This is carbon, all the way across. Notice the top row. I'm missing an H. I'm missing an H. I'm missing an H. These are what we call unsaturated. If it was saturated, you'd have all H's top and bottom. Simple math here. Here's the problem. When you get rid of the hydrogen, you make this much more likely to go rancid and to oxidize. Grandma had a tub of lard next to her cook stove all winter long, and you weren't worried about it. It didn't go rancid because lard is a saturated fat. If you put her bottle of olive oil that she uses now next to her cook stove all winter long, please don't use it after about 3 weeks. The oxidized products that cause free radicals in the body that inflame the tissue and mess up your DNA are not what you're interested in. Many oils are rancid. And then to make it even go quicker, we fry with these oils, which now really raises havoc. We got superheated oils that oxidize. And by the way, while we're talking about olive oil, people say, well, I get cold-pressed, extra virgin, etc., etc., etc. I'm saying, great. Do you ever buy one that's cold processed? They go, what are you talking about? I go, yeah. How do you think you get that nice, beautiful golden oil out of a crushed olive that looks like mud when you crush it and get the juice out of an olive? They say, well, the Bible uses olive oil. I say, yeah. Go make it the same way they did. Stomp your olives, put them in a press, whatever you want. And if you want to find out what it looks like, go to a health food store and buy the olive oil brand called Haun, H-A-U-N. By the time you pay for it, you probably put it on the shelf as a souvenir. It's very expensive. But at the same time, if you look at it, you go, who left all the mud in it? Nobody. That's actually olive oil. This cold processed, extra virgin is not, it's cold pressed. It's not cold processed. They still raise it over 300 degrees. You got a major problem with it. So there really isn't any good olive oil out in the market that I can. But you can have all the olives you want, unless you got high blood pressure. Then I'll tell you have to soak them overnight to reduce the sodium. Prostate deaths. We're talking about men here again. We look at the Philippines. We look at Italy, See, here's what should happen. If olive oil was so good at preventing cancer, here's what you should see on my slides. You would see that Italy uses 80 grams of fat a day, and this dot here would be down here. The same as the Philippines. You go, got it. If they can eat that kind of fat, and that reduces their risk of cancer, then you go, I'm interested, count me in. Take a few tablespoons a day. Unfortunately, that's not the data. It doesn't work. So once again, prostate cancer is dose-related. The higher the fat, and you've found the United States, haven't you? Dr. Campbell, the China study doctor was known for, was a nutrition PhD researcher, and obviously he is one of the major researchers in the China study. And so when you get your book, The China Study or whatever, you're reading about his research, coordinated with the Chinese government. But he fed laboratory rats different quantities of protein to find out if protein was the problem with cancer rate. When he started his career, he was convinced that if he could get enough protein to underprivileged people, like in the Philippines, that he could solve their cancer problem. Through his research, guess what he found out? Just the opposite. Now he's back home. He's come back from the Philippines, and he's doing his laboratory rats to see if what he saw out there can be reproduced. 5% protein had the low rate of cancer growth. Rats that were fed 20% high. Now this protein wasn't because it was infected, or wasn't because it was coming from a source that had high cholesterol, or wasn't coming from a source that was cooked or baked or done something wrong. This is animal protein, period. Continues with his research, a different research. He said, okay, let's find out if I inject a carcinogen, a cancer-causing agent, into the rats, what happens? Well, he chose the one that he was doing research on in the Philippines, and that was aflatoxin, which causes liver cancer, which is from peanuts, if they mold. So he injected a high dose of a carcinogen, aflatoxin, and fed them a low-protein diet, and they had a protein response to cancer. Even if you live in an environment that's toxic to you, even if you're eating aflatoxin and you're on a low-protein diet, it still makes perfect sense. Yeah, we have a polluted environment. The vegetables in my garden still can get acid rain. I mean, there's no perfect diet. But in a polluted environment that we live in, the concept of eating high protein is absolutely ludicrous. And we've been sold that one too. You've got to have your protein drink. You want big muscles? Get protein. Well, unfortunately, it goes from here not to here. It goes from here and messes up your immune system. You don't need to eat a lot of protein and have big muscles. It's called work. If you want to have a high dose of carcinogen, a low protein diet, a low response to cancer, how about we inject a minimal dose, a low dose of carcinogen, and feed them a high protein diet? And so the rats that got a lot less cancer-causing agent on a high protein diet had a very high response. So what was his target? Dr. Campbell made a chart. 4% protein, 6% protein fed to his animals, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 20%. He put what he considers adequate protein and body growth at 10%. We have populations doing real good at 8%. But you can see where the curve starts jumping quickly, and that's why he said it here. It's not that 10% cause less cancer than 4%. It's that when you go to 12%, you almost go up 3 times or 2.5 times. By the time you go to 14%, you're at 70. And if you're eating 20% protein, then the amount of animals that got tumors in that group was about 86%. Can't afford to do it. I can't. Dr. Largo, a gerontologist studying old folks, high protein diet, he classified as greater than 20% of the calories, same as Dr. Campbell. Moderate protein, 10 to 20, low protein diet. Here's what he found out, and here's what you're going to read in the news. It got my attention. 74% increase overall mortality, 74% increased death rate in 50 to 65-year-old age group. Then this is what got the headlines. 28% reduction in overall mortality in those over age 65 if they ate a high-protein diet. I'm going, something doesn't ring true here. What's going on? Does that mean that people over 65 don't digest their food as well, and they got to pump a whole lot more protein in just to get in the system? What's going on here? Look at the next part. What they didn't tell you is that this group had a 4-fold increase of dying from cancer. So they have a 28% reduction, but they have a 400% increase. Don't think we're spending our money too good here. And they had a 500% risk of dying from diabetes. So are you willing to trade almost a 10 times problem for this problem? See, it totally didn't make sense once we got through it. So once we made it through it and looked at the whole picture, no. People over age 65 do not need to be on a high-protein diet. They will get a lot more diabetes, death rate, and a lot more of them dying from cancer. It's not worth it. Moderate and low. And here's the important part. This is what totally should shock you. And by the way, I'm not recommending you go on a high-protein vegetable diet, but here's what they found out. The relationship, what we just talked about here, disappeared if the patients were only eating plant proteins. So if you're going to mess up on protein, make sure it's plant source. That doesn't mean you leave here and go to the health food store and buy your canister of pea protein and eat it like every morning. That doesn't take the place of a good breakfast, because we haven't got to talk about fiber yet and all the other good things you're going to be. Biology of proteins, animal protein, increased intake, increased disease. It's a high in saturated fat, has no dietary fiber, it's low in antioxidants and low in vitamins. Well, who got them all? The cow did. The cow has to make a living. You think it puts vitamins in the meat? No, it has vitamins because it wants to run around and feel good every day. Why would it put them in the meat? That's for you. So don't buy the cow. Plant proteins, increased intake, no disease. Low in mono and polyunsaturated fats, high in dietary fiber, high in antioxidants, high in vitamins. This slide also really got me because, see, back at heart disease days, I was telling people that if you don't want to be a vegetarian, then you should be getting rid of beef and pork and switching to fish and chicken. Sounds logical. Look at this. Diet low in 2 amino acids in a typical American diet. These 2 amino acids are phenylalanine and tyrosine. We'll come back to that. So by giving a diet low in those 2 amino acids, we increased our T helper cells, one of our immune cells, our cytotoxic cells, obviously they kill cells, and our natural killer cells. When we went back after 28 days, 4 weeks, 2 weeks later, they monitored them again on a typical American diet. It had dropped below where they were in the beginning on the T helper cells, cytotoxic cells. The natural killer cells still went up, but after another period of time, they went back down. It's just not on this slide. So what has it? Well, phenylalanine tyrosine, applesauce, apples, cabbage, collard greens, mustard greens, dried figs. Very few people eat 10 of them. Lentils have a little bit in there comparable to meat level, but I don't recommend that you eat a load of lentils. You can have some legumes, lentils, fine. But what I want to show you is what we are eating. 1 egg, 332, 255. 1 cup of whole milk, 388 milligrams of these proteins in each one. Crab, 800 and 630. Tuna, that good food, 970, 836. Beef sirloin, 1012, 868. 1 chicken breast, 1100 versus 960. So what are we telling people? We're going to help out your coronary arteries, but go ahead and get cancer. I don't like those kind of decisions or odds. So what we were doing is by switching people to more seafood and more fowl, turkey, chicken, etc., we were actually increasing the risk of getting cancer. Are you starting to get the feeling you can't win with this stuff? Animal protein, colon cancer, and meal frequency. How many meals do you eat a day? The better question is not how many meals do you eat a day, how many would your intestine like to eat? So you're asking the wrong person. You're asking your appetite or your taste buds, maybe even your brain, or better yet, your stomach. We got to get past functioning at the stomach level and go back to functioning at the brain level. That's kind of hard. Meals per day, 2 or less meals per day, the risk of rectal cancer and colon cancer, they set to 1. If they ate 3 meals a day, their risk almost doubled, and 1.5 times here. If they ate 4 or more meals a day, it did double almost in both categories. So what's the deal here? If you're eating a diet that can cause colon cancer, and you eat more of it, we're in trouble. If you eat less of it, we have less trouble. So it's exposure again. So if you're eating less of a bad thing, you have less problems. That's really what this is saying. Meal frequency has to do with bowel health. Most of us eat far too often, unfortunately far too much. How about getting your sleep? Now we're getting too close to home. I should have got more sleep last night. My wife did inform me when I woke up I did get my 8 hours in. It was just later. Men who slept only 4 hours a night ate 22% more calories the next day than when they sleep 8 hours. Why do people tend to overeat when they're sleep deprived? So they don't fall asleep and the boss come in and dismiss them. I mean, I got to stay awake. I got to do something. By the way, it's a fallacy to try to sleep. Try to sleep. Try to stay awake all night and eat your way through your trip. After a while, the stomach wins. It'll make you more tired because now it's got to put blood to the stomach and less blood to the brain. So if you're one of these persons that starts eating on a trip and expects your way to eat, I hope it's a short trip, because if you've got to drive till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you better have someone who stays awake to give you the rib. Studies also found a single night with only 4 hours of sleep led to insulin resistance in 75% of the men and women. And we're not talking about diabetics here. 75% insulin resistance would mean it takes that much more insulin just to keep your blood sugar low. But let's go on. Insulin resistance leads to heart disease, diabetes, and possibly breast cancer. That's why I'm concerned. That's why people who are trying to avoid cancer also avoid sugar. How about skin? The most common cancer as far as number in the United States is skin cancer. It also is the least deadly, except for the melanoma variety. What they find out, number of lesions, number of skin lesions that were cancerous or precancerous. On a low-fat diet, that group had 3, as compared to the average American diet, that group had 10. So it's not sun exposure that is the big problem. It's the hamburger stand that's out in the sun that's going to get you worse than the sun. In fact, right now, guess what we use for some skin cancers? Guess what the treatment is? Sunshine. People actually do better in certain types of skin cancer going out and getting a little more sun. Amazing. Sometimes I really get upset about the bill of goods that some people are passing out. Now, melanoma can be on the bottom of your foot that has never seen the sun hardly. So melanoma and sun is not a good correlation. Basal cell, squamous cell, there seems to be a correlation. So if you're the kind of person that went to the beach and basically turned yourself into a charbroiled whatever, that's not healthy for the skin. That's not healthy for anything. It's just too much radiation. But I'm talking about the person who works in the garden or gets out and gets some sun, et cetera, et cetera. That is actually a lot more healthy. A fun slide won't take a lot of time because we want to move ahead. But what I want to show you is the comparison of fat content, because it gets almost humorous. Going to the movies, Cineplex, one thing of Cineplex popcorn, 50 grams of fat would be equivalent to 42 pounds of jelly beans. By the way, don't eat these, please. Or 500 carrots. Now, you can go to the movies and get one thing of popcorn, or you can spend the whole rest of the year with a carrot and a half every day for the same amount of fat. Do you wonder why we have problems? Now look at this one. 3 McDonald's, quarter pounder. These are all equivalents here. 5 pounds of white turkey meat, are 2,950 radishes. By the time you finish those, after one meal, you would probably never want to see a radish again. I think your stomach would probably be inside out, and you wouldn't be able to eat for the rest of the week. It would be an incredible weight loss program. But don't say any bad words about Dr. Collins when you finish your 2,950 radishes, the same as you would with your quarter pound. Well, it's 3/4 pounders. That'd take you a whole day on that one. We'll give you all day to finish the radishes, too. Okay, 4 Snickers bars, 5.5 egg rolls, 310 cups of raw spinach. Some of these, I don't eat at these places. I can't even pronounce them. So if I do a bad job, excuse me. Chimchanga or whatever, glazed donuts, I got that one. White Wonder bread, 86 pieces, equivalent to 172 apples. Here's my favorite. 1 dish of fettuccine alfredo, 5 Hostess cherry pies, cherry of course, 31 pieces of bacon, 485 potatoes, has the same amount of fat as that one plate that someone went to the restaurant and had one meal. They could have a potato and a half for the whole rest of the whole year and not be the same fat. Meat and breast cancer risk, looking at countries around the world that we think are very deprived and on a very meager diet. It's incredible. Low socioeconomic status, eating meat rarely, if ever. See, about 7% of the population in China eats meat daily. In India, eats meat daily at this point. See, somewhere around 3/4 of the world population is vegetarian, just not by choice. We in America, we have a choice. The high socioeconomic status had about 8.5 times the amount of breast cancer that the low socioeconomic status did. Study came out that got Dr. Campbell, the China study doctor, his attention was a journal that came out from India, and they reported a significant increase in liver cancer in those people in India. But guess what? The higher protein intake that the Indians ate, the more cancer they got. So it wasn't the ones that were living on beans and rice having the problem. The ones that could afford steak. A little different study comparing Mormons with Adventists. We used the Adventist health study here with a Mormon study because we wanted to find out what is the big difference. So we got 2 groups. Most of them don't smoke. Most of them don't drink alcohol. The biggest difference between the Mormon group and the Adventist group is red meat intake. So here's what they found out. The general population they set to 100%. Mormon women had a 17% reduction in their cancer death rate. Mormon men had a 32%. Adventist women, a 32%. And Adventist men basically cut their mortality compared to the general population in half. Meat eating, poultry, fish, increases ovarian cancer risk. The lacto-ovo vegetarian is not even a good comparison, but that's what we have with this particular study. 15.6 people per 100,000 got ovarian cancer. Eating meat 1 to 3 times a week, 18. Eating meat 4 or more times a week, 26. Almost double the rate of that. Now, this is not a good route to go here because both milk and eggs have been shown to increase ovarian cancer risk. I wish I had the vegan population on this. I don't. Overweight and cancer in general, just across the board, all cancers. If a person is 20 to 30% overweight, men are a 9% increase, ladies are 19. I won't tell you it's fair, ladies. I don't know why, but men seem to be able to tolerate their weight being overweight and having less cancer. But before you get too upset, ladies, you do a whole lot better on the heart disease end than we do. So whether heart disease or whether cancer gets you, we don't want to, there's no reason to debate that here. 30 to 40% overweight, 14 for men, 20. Those are 40% plus overweight, 33 and 55. There's something about carrying extra weight that messes up your immune system. Fat adipose tissue puts off a whole series of hormones that increases your inflammation. Like I said, this isn't about just being cosmetic and everybody having a perfect figure. That isn't the issue here. The issue is, how are you taking care of your immune system? We're going to go ahead, and I will deal with this a lot more detail, but really quick. Then we're going to take a breather, and you will be getting a handout during the second session, and that will have some of the overhead. So I wanted you to basically catch an overall picture of what we're trying to deal with in prevention of cancer. The RAVE program, the RAVE, stands for, obviously, R, avoid refined foods. Technically, this could be the R program. Everything else below that is a refined food. It's just that we just don't recognize it. So if no refined foods, you'd have to go out to the tree and pick your apple and eat it. We're not going to count your chewing as refining, okay? You haven't added anything to it, and you haven't taken anything away. How about whole wheat? If we grind the whole wheat, what have we done? We just pulverized it. We didn't take anything away. We didn't add to it. So technically, you can even have that is not refined. So back to our slide. Avoid refined foods. Number 2, or A, avoid animal products. This is the therapeutic regime that we put people on that come to us that have cancer, that have diabetes, that have heart disease, or would like to avoid all the above, and their risks are quite high. This is therapeutic here. I gave a little hint before. A maintenance diet where you'd use 1 teaspoon of oil every day for your life, I don't have any way of telling you that's harmful, that's good, that's bad, I don't know. But I will tell you this. If you want to eat more fats, eat them unrefined. Enjoy your avocados, enjoy your nuts, enjoy your seeds, enjoy your olives. If God made the fat in the food, I mean, he made macadamia nuts too, but I mean, those you may have to go easy on, okay? I'm glad they probably cost so much, otherwise we may have a problem here. The point is that a food that has fat in it also has the antioxidants in it if we haven't messed it up. When I say mess up your nuts, it's called roasting them. If you want to change the structure of the fat in the nut, heat it in whatever kind of oil at 400 degrees, and you've changed the structure. That's called cheating. That means you've actually changed it, which means technically that would be a refined food. The V stands for no vegetable oils, and most people, that is the biggest hurdle on this chart. If I said no sugar, most people would get it instantly. Well, what is sugar? Refined carbohydrate. What is oil? Refined fat. The same rules apply. You can't handle these refined foods. Your body wasn't made to. Your digestive system wasn't made to. And now we're saying your immune system. And the E is obviously no exceptions, no excuses, and I think I've heard them all, or at least a good share of them. And you need to exercise. So let's go ahead and open up for questions, and I'll either tell you I'll answer them now or we'll cover it in the next session. But let's open up, get up, stretch a leg, breathe some air, clear the head before you go to sleep on me, and we'll get started at, why don't we get started? We got 10 minutes. Let's get started at 3:15 if we can. saturated fat. It even outruns lard big time. Here's what's got my attention. I'm old enough that when I went through school, coconut and palm oil were the things that they had switched to be a non-dairy creamer. And we go, sorry, folks, you just went from dairy to something that's going to cause a lot more heart disease. So we knew that back then. It's made a big resurgence. If you go back and do careful research with coconut oil, you'll find that the old research wasn't bad. It's still valid, and coconut oil is, number one, not necessary. It's very highly saturated and will increase your heart disease and cancer. Sorry. My wife likes it because it gives a certain flavor. I just don't want to eat much of it. Yes. Sir, you can ask me about any oil, and the answer will be the same. It's called a refined product. Whether you extract it from tomato oil, it's not going to make it better. But tomato oil would be so expensive, I don't have to even worry about that one. It's like these essential oils that a lot of people are using. Do you realize how many bushels and bushels and bushels of whatever herb they do with to get oil out of it? I mean, the oil in some of those plants are probably less than 1%, which means you got to squeeze 1,000 pounds of plants to get 1 pound of oil. Anyway, that's why they're so expensive too. Yes, ma'am. Does a microwave destroy food enzymes? Here's my question. Why are you eating food enzymes anyway? Let me tell you about food enzymes, okay? You've got an acid in the stomach, hydrochloric acid, that should drop the pH to about 3 with a good, healthy stomach. There's very few food enzymes that can make it through an acid bath at pH 3, no matter what you eat. You don't need food enzymes. Your pancreas is a superb organ for making animal enzymes and making all you need. You don't need food enzymes. So the raw food folks say you need to have plant enzymes. I'm saying, no, but that doesn't mean raw food is bad. It's just that they've got a wrong reason they're talking about. Sorry. You look like I blew a balloon. You don't need, the reason you eat raw foods, the reason you eat fresh, is not because of the food enzymes that are innately in the plant. If the squash has food enzymes, why do you think it needs it? The same reason you need enzymes. It builds the sugars, it changes in the plant, it's for the plant's sake, not for you. You got all the enzymes you need. You're good. What's that? I am not worried about eating enzymes. I'm worried about taking care of my pancreas because it. Well, let's talk about what microwave is, okay? I don't know. Maybe I'm going to get a spot here after a while. If I carry it here, this is a microwave. That's why it gets hot when you put it on your head too long. Or you can wear a headset. It's more dangerous the younger you are, they tell us, with these phones. But I haven't heard a real move to everyone to get rid of their cell phone. You know why? Same reason that people don't change their diet. But here's the point. I'm still carrying a cell phone. Microwaves are not ionizing radiation, like X-ray, gamma ray, atomic bomb, that type of thing. A microwave is what is in the towers, whatever. The one you have in your house, if you have one, is basically a tube that sets this certain wavelength, we call it a ray gun, through the food, and that rays going through the food excites the water molecules to start vibrating. So your heat is the heat of friction. The question is, I'm not worried about the water molecules. I'm worried about the fat molecules that get superheated in the food, and that's where your problem lies, and that's where you get bad reports. It's because we had bad reports from people, even at hospital setting, Johns Hopkins, where they would microwave the breast milk that ladies had pumped for that newborn child. And they went, this is not good. And so they have done extensive tests on radiating breast milk with microwave and what it does to the nutrition and the fat in that. And I would not feed your child microwaved any kind of milk. So that's the one end to the other. Here's the point. Most people that microwave foods that are high in fat. Whether it's your fast food restaurants, what you do at home, your convenience foods, that's the problem. Microwaving water, I'm less worried about. Microwaving your broccoli, I'm less worried about. As the fat content gets up, microwaving gets a lot more serious for you. And that is bogus about microwaving your water and watering the plant. Microwave the water and water the plant. You see, YouTubes are incredible. They got this poor plant dying after 5 days. Well, if you want to do the experiment, I mean, don't pour boiling water on the plant. I mean, get it down to the room temperature again. And obviously, boiling water will knock out almost any plant. But try it. It's just bogus. So don't believe everything you see on the computer or the television or Time magazine or whatever. I mean, evaluate the facts. Folks, we need to stand up and stretch a leg. I need to give my voice 5 minutes. No, I'm good. We're not done yet, folks. They're all going to come back. Oh, okay.
I just got a puppy a week ago, and I decided I was going to only give her healthy food.
Great.
You know, organic, no processed, no GMO.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I've been heating milk up on the dish for her.
In the microwave.
Yeah.
Well, bless your heart.
I'm doing 0% fat. Therefore,
That's offensive. But I'm not sure that milk is good for your dog to start with. If you want a healthy dog, you're going to give them soy milk.